Sarah Chen stood at the viewing window of her new quarters, staring at the massive gas giant below. Rings of ice and rock circled the planet like a painting. She had traveled 3 months through space to reach this station. The Celestial Garden Station floated in orbit, a giant glass dome filled with plants from 1,000 different worlds. She pressed her hand against the cool glass. Back on Earth, her sister would be putting the kids to bed right now. Sarah felt the familiar ache in her chest. She missed them. She missed home. But she had chosen this assignment. Someone had to show the galaxy that humans were more than scary stories. The door chimed. Sarah turned and called out permission to enter. A tall figure stepped inside. The Cathari stood almost 7 feet tall, covered in golden brown fur. His face looked like a lion from Earth, with a thick mane and amber eyes. Those eyes watched Sarah with barely hidden suspicion. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I am Administrator Velkoth. I will show you to your work area." "Thank you, Administrator," Sarah said. She tried to smile, but Velkoth's expression did not change. They walked through the station's corridors in silence. Sarah noticed other Cathari stepping aside as they passed. Some stared at her openly. Others pulled their children closer, as if Sarah might suddenly attack. She understood why. Earth was what the galactic community called a death world. Humans had evolved fighting predators, surviving ice ages, and beating diseases that would have killed most species. To the peaceful races of the galaxy, humans looked like monsters. Forward-facing eyes. Teeth designed for tearing meat, bodies built for endurance hunting. Sarah was 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed barely 120 pounds. She had never hurt anyone in her life, but when the Cathari looked at her, they saw a predator. "This is Section 7, Velkoth said, stopping at a large door. "The nursery quadrant. Young plants that need constant care are kept here." The door opened. Sarah gasped. The room stretched out before her like a dream. Rows and rows of plants filled the space, each one more beautiful than the last. Some glowed with soft light. Others had leaves that moved like they were breathing. The air smelled like rain and fresh earth and growing things. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered. "You will work alone," Velkoth said. His tone was cold. "Your station is in the back corner. You will have minimal contact with other staff." Sarah's joy faded. "I see. Do you?" Velkoth turned to face her fully. "Dr. Chen, I will be honest. I did not want to hire a human, but the Galactic Council insisted we give your species a chance. So here you are." "I'm qualified," Sarah said quietly. "I have 3 advanced degrees in xenobotany. I've published 17 papers. "You're from a death world," Velkoth interrupted. "Your species survived by being more dangerous than everything that tried to kill you. We've read the reports, Dr. Chen. Humans can run for days without stopping. You heal from injuries that would be fatal to us. You eat foods that would poison other species. And when you're threatened, you become—" He paused, searching for the word. "Terrifying." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. "I'm not terrifying. I'm a botanist. I study plants." "You have the eyes of a hunter," Velkoth said. "You move like a predator, even when you think you're being gentle. My people have instincts, Dr. Chen. Those instincts tell us to keep our cubs far away from you." "I would never hurt a child," Sarah said. Her voice shook. "Perhaps not intentionally." Velkoth walked to the door. "But you are what you are. Do your work. Stay in your section. In 6 months, we will evaluate your performance." He left. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Sarah stood alone in the beautiful room full of plants. She felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had known this would be hard. She had known people would be afraid. But knowing and experiencing were 2 different things. She walked to her workstation in the corner and set down her bag. From here, she could see the entire nursery. She could also see something else. One wall was made of clear material, and through it, she could see into another room. It was a classroom. Small desks were arranged in rows. Educational screens covered the walls, and sitting at those desks were Cathari cubs. They were so small. Their fur was fluffy and soft-looking. Their ears were too big for their heads. They played with learning tablets and chased each other around the desks. One of them tumbled over its own feet, and the others chirped with laughter. Sarah watched them, and her heart hurt. She thought of her nieces and nephews. She thought of story time and playing in the park and giving piggyback rides. These cubs would never know her. Their parents would make sure of that. She turned away from the window and looked at her plants instead. Plants didn't care that she was from Earth. Plants didn't run away scared. "Hello, friends," she said softly to the nearest seedlings. "I guess it's just you and me." She began to work. The station provided detailed care instructions for each species. Sarah lost herself in the familiar routine of checking soil, adjusting lights, measuring water. Hours passed. She didn't notice the small faces pressed against the viewing panel behind her. She didn't see three cubs watching with curious eyes. She didn't hear them whisper to each other about the strange, tall, furless creature who talked to plants like they were people. When Sarah finally left for the day, she was exhausted. The emotional weight of Velkoth's words pressed down on her. She had come so far. She had given up so much. And for what? To be treated like a dangerous animal? Back in her quarters, she opened a video message from Earth. Her sister's face filled the screen, and behind her, two small children waved and shouted, "Aunt Sarah! Aunt Sarah! When are you coming home? Show us the aliens. Do they have tails?" Sarah smiled, despite the ache in her chest. "Not for a while, sweeties," she said to the recording. "But I promise I'm making friends. It just takes time." She sent the message, knowing it would take weeks to reach Earth. Then she lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she would try again. She would be patient. She would be gentle. She would prove that humans could be trusted, even if it took forever. Outside her window, the rings of the gas giant turned slowly in the darkness. Somewhere on the station, three young cubs dreamed of the strange creature who sang to plants. And somewhere in his office, Administrator Velkoth updated his security reports, never imagining how wrong his first impressions would turn out to be. The story was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah arrived at the station. She had fallen into a routine. Wake up, eat breakfast alone, walk to Section 7, work with her plants until late, return to her quarters, sleep, repeat. She rarely saw other staff members. When she did, they nodded politely and hurried away. No one invited her to meals. No one stopped to chat. Sarah existed in a bubble of isolation, surrounded by thousands of people, but completely alone. The plants became her friends. She talked to them while she worked, telling them about her day, about Earth, about anything that came to mind. Sometimes she sang old songs her mother had taught her. The acoustics in the nursery made her voice echo softly. She didn't know she had an audience. On the other side of the viewing panel, 3 Cathari cubs had made a discovery. Their classroom shared a wall with Section 7, and if they pressed their faces against the clear material during their free time, they could watch the human work. Kieran was the eldest, with rust-colored fur and an adventurous spirit that often got her in trouble. She had been the first to notice Sarah 3 days after the human arrived. "Look," Kieran had whispered to her friends. "What's that?" Tessic, sleek and black-furred, had peered through the panel nervously. "That's the human. Papa says we should stay away. He says humans are dangerous." "She doesn't look dangerous," said Pola, the youngest. Her cream-colored fur was still baby-soft. "She looks sad." They watched Sarah bend over a tray of purple flowers, her fingers gentle as she transplanted seedlings. She hummed while she worked, a melody unlike any Cathari song. "She talks to the plants," Kieran said, fascinated. "That's weird," Tessic whispered. "I talk to my stuffed animal," Pola said. "Maybe she's lonely too." The cubs began visiting the panel every day during their midday break. They watched Sarah work, studying her strange appearance. She had no fur at all, just smooth skin. Her hair was black and long, tied back while she worked. Her movements were precise and careful. One day, Sarah noticed them. She had been carrying a pot of glowing ferns when she saw 3 small faces pressed against the viewing panel. She froze. The cubs froze. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, Sarah set down the pot. She raised one hand and waved. The cubs didn't run. Kieran, always the brave one, lifted her paw and waved back. The gesture was clumsy but clear. Pola let out a chirp of laughter. The sound was high-pitched and delighted. Sarah's face broke into a huge smile. From that day on, everything changed. Sarah began performing for her secret audience. She would hold up interesting plants to show them. She made exaggerated, gentle movements, moving slowly so she wouldn't frighten them. She learned some basic Cathari gestures from the station's database and practiced them. "Hello," she signed, placing her hand over her heart. Kieran copied the gesture, then nudged Tessic to do the same. "Pretty flower," Sarah signed, holding up a blue blossom. Pola clapped her paws together, bouncing with excitement. The cubs started bringing their learning tablets to the panel. They would show Sarah their schoolwork. Sarah would give them thumbs up or make silly, encouraging faces. She couldn't cross the panel to actually help them, but she could be there. And somehow that seemed to matter. These daily visits became the highlight of Sarah's life. She found herself smiling more, working with more energy. She even started packing extra food at breakfast, eating her lunch near the viewing panel so the cubs could watch. "See?" she said one day, holding up her sandwich. "Humans eat regular food, not scary, right?" Kieran tilted her head, studying the sandwich with interest. The happiness lasted 2 weeks. Then one afternoon, Sarah arrived at the panel as usual. The cubs weren't there. She waited, but they didn't come. The next day, same thing. On the 3rd day, Sarah saw why. An adult Cathari stood near the classroom door, watching the cubs carefully. A guard had been posted. Someone had discovered their secret meetings. Sarah's heart sank. That evening, as she was preparing to leave, she heard angry voices in the corridor outside Section 7. She recognized one of them, Velkoth. "They were unsupervised. What if the human had..." "Had what?" another voice challenged. "Broken through reinforced transparent aluminum? The cubs were perfectly safe." "You don't understand. Humans are unpredictable. The voices faded as they moved away. The next morning, Sarah arrived to find the viewing panel frosted over. She could no longer see into the classroom. The cubs could no longer see her. Sarah pressed her hand against the frosted surface. On the other side, she imagined 3 small cubs wondering where their strange friend had gone. She tried to work, but her heart wasn't in it. The isolation crashed back down on her, heavier than before. She had lost her only friends on the station. That evening, she returned to her quarters feeling defeated. Maybe Velkoth was right. Maybe humans and Cathari weren't meant to mix. Maybe she should request a transfer back to Earth. She sat down at her desk, and her data pad chimed. A message. Anonymous. Sarah opened it, expecting some kind of official notice. Instead, she saw a drawing. It had been made with clumsy paw strokes on a touch screen. 3 round figures with pointed ears stood in a row. Next to them was a tall, thin figure with no fur. Above them all were stars, drawn as simple 5-pointed shapes. At the bottom were 2 words in careful, childish Cathari script. Sarah ran the words through her translator. Friends forever. She stared at the drawing for a long time. Then she saved it carefully to her personal files. She would keep it always. In the classroom on the other side of the frosted panel, Kieran tucked away her tablet. Tessic and Pola huddled close to her. "Do you think she got it?" Pola whispered. "I hope so," Kieran said. "I hope she knows we didn't forget her." "Teacher says we're not supposed to like the human," Tessic said nervously. "Teacher says humans are dangerous." "Miss Sarah isn't dangerous," Pola said firmly. "She waves. She smiles. She shows us pretty plants." "When I grow up," Kieran announced, "I'm going to make everyone see that Miss Sarah is good. You'll see." The three cubs curled up together, dreaming of their lost friend. They didn't know that in just a few days they would have a chance to prove their faith in the strange, gentle human who sang to plants and smiled at cubs through transparent walls. Sarah slept that night with the drawing displayed on her bedside screen. In her dreams, she walked through gardens with three small cubs running ahead of her, laughing and free. It was a nice dream. Reality, she thought, was rarely that kind. But sometimes, just sometimes, reality surprised you. The universe was full of surprises, and the biggest one was just days away. The alarm woke Sarah at 3 in the morning. Emergency lights flashed in her quarters. Her datapad screamed with urgent messages. "All xenobotany staff report to Section 4 immediately. Critical climate failure. The world seed is dying." Sarah was dressed and running within 2 minutes. Section 4 was chaos. Emergency lights cast everything in red. Scientists rushed between equipment banks, shouting measurements and adjustments. In the center of the room, in a special containment chamber, a small tree was wilting before their eyes. The world seed. The last seed from the Talvari homeworld. The Talvari people had gone extinct 50 years ago, but their planet could still be restored if this single seed survived to maturity. If it died, an entire world's ecosystem died with it. "The temperature spiked 3 hours ago," someone explained rapidly. "We've lost climate control. The seed can't tolerate these fluctuations." "How long does it have?" Sarah asked. 6 hours, maybe less." Sarah looked at the dying tree and made a decision. "Show me everything, every system, every backup, every possible fix." What followed was 12 hours of desperate work. Sarah and 6 other scientists worked without stopping. They rerouted power systems. They rebuilt temperature regulators with spare parts. They manually adjusted humidity levels every 15 minutes. Sarah forgot about time. She forgot about meals. She forgot about everything except the small tree that represented an entire world's last hope. Her human body, built for endurance, kept going. She didn't notice when other scientists took breaks. She didn't notice when they ate. She was in what her mother called the zone, that state where nothing existed except the task at hand. Finally, after 12 straight hours, the climate system stabilized. The world seed's leaves stopped wilting. Color returned to its bark. It would survive. Everyone cheered. Scientists hugged each other. Even Velkoth, who had supervised the entire emergency, managed a tired smile. "Excellent work, Dr. Chen," he said. "You saved it." Sarah nodded, then swayed on her feet. "Dr. Chen?" The room tilted. Sarah grabbed a console to steady herself. When had she last eaten? Breakfast. Yesterday's breakfast. She had meant to grab her lunch pack before rushing to the emergency, but in her panic, she had forgotten it. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice sounded far away. "Just need to get my lunch." "The emergency storage is still locked down," someone said. "Won't reopen for another hour. Safety protocols." "Oh," Sarah blinked slowly. "Right. I'll just go to the cafeteria." "Cafeteria's closed for sanitation cycle. Won't open until tonight." The room spun harder. Sarah's body, which had been running on pure determination for 12 hours, suddenly realized it had no fuel left. Her blood sugar dropped like a stone. Her vision tunneled. I should go to my quarters, she mumbled. She made it 3 steps before her legs stopped working properly. She stumbled, caught herself on a wall, then stumbled again. Dr. Chen, you need medical... But Sarah was already staggering toward the door. Medical attention meant needles and scans and people seeing how weak she was. She just needed food. She just needed to get to Section 7, which was close, and sit down for a minute. She barely remembered walking through the corridors. Everything blurred together. Red lights, white walls. The concerned face of a security officer asking if she needed help. Fine, she heard herself say. Just fine. Section 7's door opened. Sarah stumbled inside, and the door closed behind her. The familiar smell of growing things surrounded her. Safe. She was safe here. She slid down the wall next to a large planter, too dizzy to make it to her workstation. The floor felt good, cool, solid. She would just rest here for a minute. Just a minute. Her vision went gray at the edges. Somewhere far away, she heard small, alarmed chirps. Through the fog in her head, Sarah wondered if she was dreaming. 3 small shapes appeared in front of her. Cream-colored, black, rust red, the cubs. But how? The door was locked. The panel was frosted. Kieran's small face appeared inches from Sarah's own. A paw touched her cheek. The touch was cold. No, wait. Sarah was cold. When had she gotten so cold? Miss Sarah? Kieran's voice was frightened. Miss Sarah, what's wrong? Tessic made a distressed sound. She's sick. We need to get teacher. The doors are all sealed because of the emergency, Kieran said. Her voice shook. No one can get in. Pola began to cry, a high-pitched keening sound that hurt Sarah's ears. Shh, shh, it's okay, Sarah whispered. Her tongue felt thick. I'm okay, just forgot to eat. Forgot to eat? Kieran sounded shocked. How do you forget to eat? Sarah tried to explain about the emergency, about the world seed, but her words came out jumbled. The cubs clustered closer, their small bodies warm against her chilled skin. Tessic, run and get help, Kieran ordered. Tessic bounded toward the door, then stopped. It won't open. The emergency locks. Try the other sections. Tessic ran from door to door, but they were all sealed. The cubs were trapped in Section 7 with a dying human, and no one could get in to help. Pola pressed against Sarah's side, crying harder. Don't die, Miss Sarah. Please don't die. Not dying, Sarah managed. Just hungry. Kieran went very still. Then she opened her school satchel with trembling paws. Inside were 3 wrapped packages, their lunch, prepared that morning by their parents. Every cub knew the rules. Never share food with predators. Food attracts predators. Sharing makes them think you're weak. These rules had been taught to Cathari children for thousands of years, but Kieran looked at Sarah, at her closed eyes, her pale skin, her shallow breathing, and every instinct in her small body screamed that this wasn't a predator. This was someone who needed help. Miss Sarah, Kieran said, her voice shaking, please, please eat. She unwrapped one package. Inside were protein clusters, small nuggets that smelled like nuts and grain. She pressed them into Sarah's hand. No, Sarah whispered. Can't take your food, your children. We have 3 packages, Kieran said desperately. Please, Miss Sarah. Tessic unwrapped his lunch too, adding it to Sarah's lap. Eat, Miss Sarah. You saved the special tree. You need to eat now. Pola pushed her lunch package into Sarah's hand, still crying. Please, please eat. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. These babies, these precious babies were trying to give her their lunch. Every instinct in her body screamed to refuse, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the food. Just a little, she whispered. You need to eat too. She took one small protein cluster and put it in her mouth. It was chewy and had a subtle sweetness. The moment it hit her stomach, her body woke up, demanding more. But the cubs needed their food. More, Kieran demanded, seeing Sarah's hesitation. Eat more. Can't take from children. You're not taking, Tessic said firmly. We're giving. That's different. Sarah took another cluster, then another. The food began to work its way into her system. The gray at the edges of her vision retreated slightly. The cubs settled around her. Kieran positioned herself in front of Sarah, facing the door. Her small body puffed up, trying to look bigger. Tessic wrapped around Sarah's arm, purring loudly. Pola curled against her side, radiating warmth. Eat all of it, Kieran commanded. We won't let anyone stop you. Sarah ate slowly, crying with every bite. The cubs had entered a protective stance around her. They were guarding her. These tiny cubs were standing guard over a human who could crush them without effort. Time passed. Sarah didn't know how long. She ate. The cubs stayed close. Slowly, her strength returned. Finally, the emergency lights shut off. Regular lighting returned. The door locks disengaged with a click. The door burst open. Administrator Velkoth charged in with security officers, expecting to find the cubs in danger. Instead, he found 3 Cathari cubs standing guard over a human, their small bodies positioned protectively while Sarah ate the last of their shared lunch. Kieran bared her tiny teeth at the intruders, a ridiculous gesture that would have been funny in any other circumstance. Velkoth stopped dead. His mouth fell open. Behind him, the security officers stared in shock. What? Velkoth breathed. What is this? Kieran's voice was fierce despite her fear. Miss Sarah didn't eat. She was helping with the emergency and forgot to eat. She's hurt. We're staying until she's better. You shared your food with her? Of course we did, Pola said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. She needed it. Sarah looked up at Velkoth, tears still streaming down her face. She tried to explain, to apologize, but the words wouldn't come. The cubs pressed closer to her, their message clear. If you want to reach the human, you'll have to go through us first. And in that moment, Velkoth understood. Everything he thought he knew about humans shifted, because a true predator would have taken all the food. A true monster would have frightened the cubs into obedience. But this human had tried to refuse, even while starving. And these cubs, his people's children, had chosen to protect her. Maybe Velkoth thought he had been very, very wrong about humans after all. The medical bay was too bright. Sarah sat on an examination table while Dr. Thren, a gray-furred Cathari with kind eyes, ran a scanner over her body. The cubs sat in chairs against the wall, refusing to leave despite multiple requests from the staff. Severe hypoglycemia, Dr. Thren announced. Borderline hypothermia, dangerous exhaustion levels. She looked at Sarah with something like wonder. You worked for 12 straight hours in this condition? I didn't realize, Sarah said quietly. I was focused on saving the world seed. You were dying, Dr. Thren said bluntly. Another hour without food, and you would have lost consciousness completely. In your weakened state, you might not have woken up. Silence filled the room. The cubs saved your life, Dr. Thren continued. Their body heat around you prevented worse hypothermia. And obviously, the food... I didn't want to take it, Sarah whispered. They're children. But you did take it. Why? Sarah looked at the 3 cubs. They stared back with wide, worried eyes. Because they wouldn't stop pushing it into my hands. And I was too weak to keep refusing. Velkoth, who had been standing silently in the corner, spoke up. You could have taken all their food. You could have scared them into giving you more. Why didn't you? Because they're children, Sarah repeated, like it was the simplest thing in the world. You don't take from children. You don't scare them. You just don't. Dr. Thren and Velkoth exchanged a long look. Do you know what pack bond is, Dr. Chen? Velkoth asked. Sarah shook her head. It's a Kethari instinct. When cubs decide someone is safe, someone worthy of trust, they claim that person as pack. It's sacred to our people. These cubs. He gestured at Kieran, Tessic, and Pola. They have claimed you. I don't understand. They stood guard over you, Velkoth explained. They positioned themselves defensively. Kieran even attempted to threaten me, an administrator, to protect you. These are pack bond behaviors. They've decided your family. Sarah's eyes went wide. But I'm not Kithari. I'm not even from the same planet. Pack bond doesn't care about species, Dr. Thren said gently. It cares about trust, about protection, about sacrifice. You tried to refuse their food even while starving. You treated them with gentleness when you could have treated them with force. You earned their bond. What does that mean? Sarah asked. Before anyone could answer, the door opened. A female Cathari rushed in. Her cream and brown fur bristled with panic. She saw the cubs and let out a cry of relief. Pola! Tessic! Kieran! She ran to them, checking them over frantically. When I heard you were sealed in Section 7 with the human, I thought... We're fine, Mama Saren, Pola said. We helped Miss Sarah. Saren looked up at Sarah. Her expression was hard to read. Then, slowly, she dropped into a low crouch, her head bowed. It was clearly some kind of formal gesture. You could have hurt my cubs, Saren said softly. You could have taken everything from them, but instead, you tried to refuse their help even while dying. I have no words for what that means to me. I would never hurt them, Sarah said. Never. I know that now. Saren stood up. My cubs have better instincts than I do. They saw the truth before any adult did. Two more Cathari entered, clearly Tessic's and Kieran's parents. They both dropped into the same respectful crouch before Sarah. The gesture made her uncomfortable. She was just a person. She hadn't done anything special. You let my son give you his lunch, Tessic's father said, his voice rough with emotion. Do you understand what that means? Cathari cubs are taught from birth never to share food with potential predators. Every instinct should have told them to run from you. Instead, they chose to trust you. They're special cubs, Sarah said. No, Kieran's mother said firmly. You're special. You're the first being outside our species that our cubs have ever pack bonded with. Velkoth stepped forward. Which brings us to a complicated situation. Pack bond is serious. It's not something we can simply ignore or dismiss. To deny a cub's pack bond causes psychological trauma. They've claimed you, Dr. Chen. The question is, do you accept? Sarah looked at the three cubs. Kieran sat straight and proud, trying to look brave. Tessic's tail twitched nervously. Pola watched Sarah with hopeful eyes. What would accepting mean? Sarah asked. It means you would have formal guardianship status, Saren explained. While their parents maintain primary care, you would be recognized as part of their pack structure. You would spend time with them, teach them, protect them when needed, and they would do the same for you. It's unprecedented, Velkoth added. No non-Cathari has ever held guardianship status. The paperwork alone will be a nightmare, but... He paused. After today, I can't deny what I saw. These cubs trust you, and perhaps that trust is deserved. Sarah felt tears building again. Since arriving at the station, she had been so alone. She had missed her family so much, and now these three small cubs were offering her a place in their lives. I would be honored, she whispered. The cubs erupted from their chairs with joyful chirps. They rushed to Sarah, climbing onto the examination table and pressing close. Pola buried her face in Sarah's shirt. Tessic wrapped around her arm again. Kieran sat proudly on Sarah's shoulder. "You're packed now, Miss Sarah," Kieran announced. "Forever and ever." "Forever and ever," Sarah agreed, her voice breaking. The parents smiled. Even Velkoth's stern expression softened slightly. Dr. Thren cleared her throat. "Now that this is settled, Dr. Chen needs rest and food. Actual food, not just protein clusters. Cubs, you may visit her tomorrow after she's recovered." But Kieran started to protest. "Tomorrow," Saren said firmly. "Miss Sarah needs to heal." The cubs reluctantly climbed down. But before leaving, each one touched Sarah's hand with their small paws, a gesture that Dr. Thren later explained was a promise to return. After everyone left, Sarah lay back on the medical bed. Dr. Thren brought her a proper meal, soup and bread and fruit. Sarah ate slowly, savoring every bite. "You surprised us all," Dr. Thren said, reviewing her medical scans. "When you arrived, everyone was afraid, but you've proven something important." "What's that?" "That the most dangerous thing about humans isn't your predator heritage. It's that you choose not to use it." Dr. Thren smiled. "You chose kindness over strength. That's truly powerful." Sarah thought about that while she ate. She had come to the station hoping to prove humans could be trusted. She had thought it would take years. Instead, 3 small cubs had seen the truth in a moment of crisis. "Dr. Thren?" Sarah asked. "How did the cubs get into Section 7 anyway? All the doors were locked." Dr. Thren's expression became amused. "Apparently, young Kieran has been studying door mechanisms in her classes. She managed to override the lock using her learning tablet and some very creative coding. She's quite clever. She broke into a sealed section to check on me. All 3 of them did. When they couldn't see you through the frosted panel and heard the emergency alarms, they grew worried. So Kieran picked the lock, and they all snuck in through a maintenance corridor." Dr. Thren chuckled. "They're going to be talked to about safety protocols. But between you and me, that's exactly the kind of loyalty pack bond creates. They knew you might need them, so they found a way." Sarah closed her eyes, overwhelmed. "I don't deserve them." "Perhaps not," Dr. Thren said gently. "But you have them anyway. That's how pack works." That night, Sarah slept in the medical bay with a full stomach and a full heart. 3 doors down, 3 cubs slept curled together, dreaming of their new pack member. And in his office, Velkoth began the complex process of officially recognizing a human as a Cathari pack guardian. The paperwork was indeed a nightmare, but some things, he realized, were worth any amount of bureaucracy. He had watched a human nearly die rather than take too much from cubs. He had watched cubs trust a predator species without hesitation. Maybe the galaxy had been wrong about humans. Maybe humans weren't just dangerous. Maybe they were dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to those who threatened the people they loved. Velkoth saved his work and looked out at the stars. Changes were coming to Celestial Garden Station. Changes that would ripple out to the entire galactic collective. It all started with 3 cubs, 1 human, and a shared lunch that became something far more important. It started with pack bond, and where it would lead, nobody knew. But Velkoth suspected it would be somewhere extraordinary. 3 months had changed everything. Sarah walked through the station corridors, and people nodded to her with genuine warmth. Some even smiled. The change had been gradual but real. Word of the pack bond had spread through the station like wildfire. At first, there had been skepticism, but then people began noticing things. They noticed how gentle Sarah was with the cubs. They noticed how Kieran, Tessic, and Pola thrived under her care. They noticed how other cubs started asking their parents if they could meet the human too. Now Section 7 looked different. Sarah's workspace still occupied one corner, but another corner had been transformed. Small stools sat around a low table. Learning tablets were stacked neatly on shelves. Toys were scattered in a designated play area. The frosted viewing panel had been removed entirely, replaced with an open doorway between the nursery and the classroom. Cubs came and went freely. Some helped Sarah water plants. Others did homework at the little table. A few simply played while their parents worked elsewhere, knowing Sarah would watch over them. "Miss Sarah," Pola called out, running through the doorway. "We're going on a field trip today." Sarah looked up from the seedlings she was transplanting. "A field trip? Where?" Kieran and Tessic entered behind Pola, their teacher following. The teacher, an elderly Cathari named Master Roth, had been suspicious of Sarah at first. Now he trusted her completely. "We're visiting the agricultural decks," Master Roth explained. "The cubs will learn how food is grown for the station. There will be 15 cubs total, with myself and 2 parent volunteers supervising." "That sounds wonderful," Sarah said. "Be good, you 3. "We're always good," Kieran said indignantly. Tessic and Pola giggled. Sarah smiled and waved as they left. She returned to her work, humming softly. The morning passed peacefully. Then, just before midday, alarms began to wail. Sarah's datapad exploded with emergency notifications. "Structural failure in lower agricultural deck 3, section compromised. Emergency bulkheads engaged. 15 cubs trapped in greenhouse 7. Sarah's blood went cold. 15 cubs. Master Roth's field trip. Her cubs. She ran. The emergency command center was chaos. Velkoth stood at the central console, coordinating response teams. When he saw Sarah, his expression was grim. "The deck took a meteor strike," he said quickly. "Small, but it compromised structural integrity. Greenhouse 7 is sealed, but it's depressurizing slowly. We have maybe 40 minutes before the cubs lose atmosphere." "Where's the rescue team?" "Can't get through. The corridors are partially collapsed. Our people are too large to fit through the gaps safely. We're trying to cut through, but it's taking too long." Sarah looked at the schematic on the screen. Her human eyes, trained for pattern recognition, traced possible paths. "There, that maintenance corridor. It's narrow, but it's intact." "Too narrow for Cathari adults," Velkoth said. "We'd get stuck." "But not for me." Sarah was already moving toward the equipment lockers. "I'm smaller, I can fit." "Dr. Chen, you could die down there. If there's another collapse, 15 cubs will definitely die if we don't try." Sarah pulled out an emergency suit. "My cubs are down there, Velkoth. I'm going." "Your cubs," Velkoth repeated softly. Then he nodded. "Take emergency breathing masks for the cubs. Take a medical kit. Take a portable emergency beacon." Sarah suited up faster than she ever had before. Other staff members helped, checking seals, loading equipment into her pack. She saw fear on their faces. Fear for her, but also hope. Hope that she could save the cubs. 40 minutes, Velkoth reminded her. "After that, I know." Sarah headed for the access hatch. "I'll get them out." The maintenance corridor was dark and cramped. Sarah crawled through spaces that scraped against her shoulders. She climbed over twisted metal. She squeezed through gaps that seemed impossible. Her human flexibility, the same trait that once made others nervous, now became crucial. She could hear the station groaning around her. Metal stressed. Bolts popped. The structure was unstable. "Keep going," she whispered to herself. "Keep going." After what felt like hours but was only 12 minutes, she reached Greenhouse 7. The door was jammed. Sarah braced her feet and pulled with all her strength. Human muscles designed for persistence and endurance strained against the stuck mechanism. The door gave way. Inside, 15 small cubs huddled together in the center of the greenhouse. Master Roth stood guard over them, but Sarah could see he was injured. His leg was bent at a wrong angle. "Miss Sarah!" Pola's cry rang out. "The human came!" another cub shouted. "She came for us!" The cubs surged forward, but Master Roth stopped them with a raised paw. "Calm, little ones. Let her work." Sarah quickly assessed the situation. The greenhouse was losing air through several small breaches. The emergency bulkheads had sealed the main doors. They were trapped. "I have breathing masks for everyone," Sarah announced, pulling them from her pack. She moved quickly, fitting each cub with a mask. Her hands were steady despite her racing heart. "Master Roth, you too." "The cubs first," he insisted. "There's enough for everyone." "Put it on." Once everyone was masked, Sarah checked her chronometer. 26 minutes left. "The emergency escape pod," she said. "Where is it?" Master Roth pointed to a hatch in the floor. "There, but it only holds 12. We tested it during safety drills." Sarah's heart sank. 15 cubs plus Master Roth. 16 total. The pod held 12. She did the math quickly. If she could fit the cubs in carefully, maybe 13. Maybe 14 if she really squeezed them. But not all of them, unless. "Load the cubs," Sarah ordered. "All of them. But do it, now." Master Roth and Sarah worked together, helping cubs into the pod. They were small, so they fit more easily than adults. 1, 2, 5, 10. Sarah counted each one. Kieran realized what Sarah was planning. "No, Miss Sarah, you have to come too." "I will," Sarah lied. "I'll take the next pod." "There is no next pod," Kieran's voice broke. "Miss Sarah, please." 14 cubs were loaded. One more. Tessic climbed in, then reached for Sarah's hand. "Come with us. Please come. I can't fit, sweetheart. But you'll be safe. That's what matters." "You promised forever," Pola cried from inside the pod. "You said forever and ever." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "And I meant it. But forever means keeping you safe. All of you." Master Roth pulled himself to the pod entrance. "Dr. Chen, I'm injured. I'm slower. You should—" "You're their teacher. They need you. Get in." "The human way," Master Roth said quietly. "Always choosing others over yourself." "It's not just the human way," Sarah said. "It's the right way." She sealed the pod hatch. Through the small window, she could see 15 cubs and one teacher. They were crying. They were screaming her name, but they were safe. Sarah activated the launch sequence. The pod would shoot up through an emergency shaft, carrying them to safety. "I love you," she called to the cubs. "Be brave. Be good. Remember me." The pod launched with a whoosh of compressed air. Sarah was alone in the dying greenhouse. She checked her chronometer. 12 minutes of air left. The structure groaned ominously. She sat down on the floor and pulled out her data pad. She recorded a message to her sister, another to Velkoth, one for each of the cubs' families, and finally one for Kieran, Tessic, and Pola. "You three are the bravest cubs I've ever known," she said, her voice shaking. "You taught me that families come in all shapes and sizes. You taught me that kindness doesn't care about species. I'm so proud to be your pack. Tell everyone that humans keep their promises. We protect our pack. Always." She sent the messages. Then she closed her eyes and thought of 3 small cubs sharing their lunch with a stranger. She thought of the drawing they'd sent her. She thought of Pola's laugh and Tessic's nervous tail twitches and Kieran's fierce protectiveness. "Worth it," she whispered. "You were worth everything." The greenhouse door exploded inward. Velkoth stood there in a full emergency suit, a rescue cable attached to his waist. "Get up, Dr. Chen. We're leaving." "What? How?" "The cub's pod reached the upper deck. Kieran immediately told me you stayed behind. She said you would do something stupid and noble. And she was absolutely right." He pulled Sarah to her feet. "Did you really think I'd let you die after you saved our children? The corridors are death traps, so we're going up." He attached Sarah to his rescue cable. "Hold on." They shot upward through the emergency shaft, pulled by powerful motors above. The greenhouse collapsed behind them, torn apart by the vacuum of space. They emerged in the upper deck, just as the entire lower agricultural section blew out. Sarah collapsed onto the deck, gasping. Around her, cubs were crying, parents were hugging their children, and Master Roth was being rushed to medical. 3 small shapes tackled her. "You came back," Pola sobbed into Sarah's suit. "You're alive." Tessic wouldn't let go of her arm. "Don't ever do that again." Kieran's voice was fierce through her tears. "We're Pack." "Pack stays together?" Sarah gathered all 3 cubs close. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I thought—" "You thought you had to save us alone," Velkoth said, standing over them. "But that's not how Pack works, Dr. Chen. Pack saves each other, always." Other cubs crowded around, touching Sarah gently, making sure she was real. Their parents stood back, watching with expressions Sarah couldn't quite read. Then, one by one, they dropped into respectful crouches. It was a formal acknowledgement, a recognition, a thank you that went beyond words. Sarah had saved their children. She had been willing to die for them. That changed everything. Over the next week, the station held a formal ceremony. Sarah was granted the title of Pack Guardian, the first non-Cathari in history to receive it. A woven bracelet made from the shed fur of all 15 cubs was placed on her wrist. It was their highest honor. "You stood guard over our children," one parent said, "just as they stood guard over you." "That's what Pack does," Sarah replied. And it was true. In the months that followed, Sarah's role expanded. She became a bridge between humans and Cathari. She taught cubs, tended plants, and proved every day that humans could be trusted. Kieran, Tessic, and Pola grew up under her care. They never forgot the human who sang to plants, who shared her lunch by the viewing panel, who was willing to die so they could live. And every day at lunch, Sarah sat in Section 7 with cubs all around her. They shared their food. They told stories. They laughed together. Sometimes Kieran would say, "Remember when we first gave you our lunch, Miss Sarah?" And Sarah would smile. "How could I forget? You 3 changed my life." "You changed ours, too," Pola would say. Tessic would simply curl close and purr, and that said everything that needed saying. In his office, Velkoth updated humanity's file in the Galactic Collective database one final time. He deleted Dangerous Predator and Unpredictable. He typed, "Humans, Apex Protectors, will sacrifice everything for those they love. Recommend pack bonding protocols. Note, give them your cubs, and they will guard them with their lives." He sent the report and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was learning the truth about humans, and it was better than anyone had imagined. Out in Section 7, Sarah worked with her plants while 15 cubs played around her. The viewing panel, now an open doorway, showed a classroom where more cubs were learning. The lesson on the board was about different species working together. The teacher pointed to Sarah. "That's what cooperation looks like," she explained. "Different, but united. Strange, but trusted. That's the future of the galaxy." The cubs looked at Sarah with admiration. She was their proof that differences didn't matter. Love did. Sacrifice did. Pack did. Sarah noticed them watching and waved. The cubs waved back. And somewhere in the vast universe, other humans were preparing to join the galactic community. They would face fear and suspicion, just as Sarah had. But they would also find what she found, that kindness transcends species, that love builds bridges, and that sometimes the greatest friendships begin with sharing lunch. The human had misplaced her lunch. The cubs had shared theirs and stood guard until she ate, and in return, she stood guard over them forever. That was Pack, that was family, that was the human way, and it was beautiful.